Hi, welcome once again to Senior Focus. I'm your host, Bill Adams. Senior Focus is a show that comes to you a couple times each month through Armstrong's Channel 20. And we like to thank Greg Roten, who is the director of the local community programming, for the chance to come to your house and give you stories and news of things that hopefully can help your life if you're over the age of about 50 or so. You know, a lot of times we'll have things about health or legal subjects or things like that, but we also like to talk about local history. And what we're going to talk about today is a new book that's out for the fall of 2013 and brand new. And we have Professor Donna DeBlasio from Youngstown State University. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey. Now this is actually, well, let's just give the title, which is what, Youngstown?
Images of America, Youngstown.
Okay. And that's available
everywhere, apparently.
Is that
right here? We're filming at Mill Creek Park in their gift shop. The Still Museum, Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor, the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, Barnes and Noble, Sam's Club. I know it's there. Somebody told me they saw it there. Several Walgreens. A number of the Walgreens in the area, and the YSU bookstore. So there are a number of locations that it is available.
Now, not only is it a good book to pick up on your own or as a gift for other people, but it's also basically you're donating to the, well, you describe where the money's going.
The royalties are actually going to the Still Museum's archives, to the museum and to the Mahoning Valley Historical Society, the Arms Museum, for the courtesy of allowing me to use the photographs for the collector for this book.
Sure. And this isn't something new to you, this type of idea. Again, maybe if you want to talk about a little bit of the history of your involvement with, it's Arcadia you've worked with, right?
Correct. This is this is my fourth book in Arcadia, two of which were co-authored. My first one was postcards. They have a series of postcard histories, and it's called Youngstown Postcards from the Steel City. And then I co-authored with Dr. Martha Polanyi the YSU history for the University Centennial in 2008. Youngstown stayed from Yoko to YSU. And Martha and I also co-authored another images book for the Amherst, Ohio Historical Society. We have a connection with them. We've been working with them for many years now, about 7 years, helping them with their archives and their museum collections and other such things. And they had an pretty amazing photographic collection, so we did a book for them too. So.
Yeah, I was familiar with, well, all of those really, but the Youngstown State book. My sister lives out of town, and of course, as a graduate, like thousands of people in the area. So that was a nice gift for her, and I'm sure this will be too. Now, this book, when did you get started? How long did this take, and what was the genesis of it?
It's probably not this summer, a year ago. Summer of 2012, I actually started. And what I did is I applied for a research assistant through the university. They have a summer program we can hire students to help us do research projects, and hired one of our grad students, a young woman named Ariel Lester. And Ari's job was to basically start doing an initial triage. And I was kind of like, there were fairly vague instructions about this is what I'm looking for. Here's the table of contents. I need stuff for all of this. So she went to the archives and scanned everything, had everything scanned to the specs. They have to be TIFF. They're very high resolution images. And then she's a very well organized young woman, and she had them all organized, and then I took it from there. So that's how it got started.
And speaking, you mentioned there's a table of contents in the chapters. If I could just read them off, it starts with built on steel, and then you have workers and work, peopling Youngstown, our community, steel goes to war, and then having fun. So you talk about, obviously, steel is the central theme, and then the workers, and again, with your background, I'm sure maybe you knew a lot of this going in, but were there things you learned that were really surprising to you, or new things you came across?
Well, you always learn new stuff. What was more amazing was finding images I had never seen before. Some pretty amazing photographs out there, and I like that. That old saying that an image or picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, it certainly is. And so I think I was more surprised at what I found and the richness of the collections that are in the various archives. So.
And do you want to? We can go through some of the pictures if
absolutely.
you'd like.
Yeah, and I thought because there were frankly so many that dealt with some aspect of the steel industry. I mean, you can't get away from it in Youngstown at all, and we shouldn't. I mean, that's really important to who we are. That's why I kind of based the book around that. So what I was really lucky, I found photos I'm pretty sure that had not been seen before, as well as stuff that's been around. My first, I like this one. This is a Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company baseball team from 1926. And it's in Camel Park, so I don't know how I can see it, but you can see the smoke from the mills in the background. I really like this. This was actually used in Ken Burns's documentary on baseball. And so that's one reason I put it in there, because I really like the image. So. Yeah,
and that from that photo, we were talking before the show, I believe I think it was Oakland Field. It could be. We're not sure, but that was in use up through my day. We're going back about 30 years, but so each individual plant or maybe sections of companies would have their own teams, basically, and I guess they travel around the area, right?
Yeah, and they also played, each department had its own team, which is really kind of interesting. And I mean, actually, there's some photos of those in the back of the book. Let's see if I can find that. I know I can find it. Oh, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, they had basketball teams.
Basketball, yeah. Oh, here you go. We have these are obviously basketball teams. This is all sheet and tube. And they're by department.
Right.
Like the blast furnace people would have a team. But more interestingly, it wasn't just the men who had teams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I saw that.
The women, and they did have a number of female employees, of course, before World War II. But these two are female championship teams. They're both from, I believe, the 30s. One of them had a date on it, and the other one didn't. But they, just from the clothing. But they did have female. I mean, a lot of the women who worked in the office or the nurses, people like that, would have made up the membership of these teams. So
I think what's fascinating about that is, especially in modern times, as people move from job to job, and jobs aren't as permanent, nowhere near as they used to be. But you think back, and really work was so much a central part of a person's life.
Yeah.
Between like the recreational things that you have in your book and the company stores that you have pictures of, and
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ubiquitous. It's in everybody's life. Even if you didn't work in the industry, and well, of course, the prosperity of the area relied on the industry. So. And
did I read somewhere? I think you mentioned the women's basketball team and the women that were. Did your mom work?
Truscon Steel.
Yeah, in the steel. Okay.
Yeah, during World War II. Her sister worked at General Fireproofing. My mother worked at Truscon. Yes, she was a Rosie the Riveter, and I found out, somebody did tell me that daughters of Rosies are rosebuds, and that just amused me very much. So I'm very proud to be a rosebud.
So when you watch Citizen Kane, it has a whole new...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Rosebud.
Well, that came out like 41, so it was before the war.
Okay. And so we were talking about the process again of maybe of creating the book, and your assistant was going through, and so... I know there are 200 plus pictures.
Yes, 218, I think.
What do you think you had to go through, or the two of you went?
I don't even want to think
guests?
about it. Well, I mean, you can only put. Somebody's going to hit me for this one. You can only put so many pictures of a blast furnace in, and we do have lots of pictures of blast furnace photos.
Okay.
They are dramatic and they're interesting, but they're amazing collections, and I wish we could show almost every. Obviously you can't, but they're wonderful. So it's really kind of picking the best of the best. That's what I think. But this is very timely. There are photos, and these have been seen before someplace. The 1913 flood, March of 13.
That's right.
Yeah, that came in handy. My one class just did an exhibit at the museum on disasters in Mahoning Valley history, and one of them was on the flood.
Oh, that's one of the major, absolutely, if not the major,
yeah. That was because that was the theme for Archives Month, was disasters in Ohio history. So. That's
it said something like
that's at Republic Steel.
yeah, 400 plus people, maybe in the Ohio area, that passed away.
Yeah, we were actually, it was kind of interesting, the Mahoning Valley, because it was mostly the industry that's near, in the floodplain. People really didn't live, most people didn't live that close to the floodplain. They were higher ground, so we didn't lose a lot of residential, some, because like on Mahoning Avenue, there were still houses back then. But we didn't lose near as, other communities would have lost more, had more residential property damage. Ours was, I guess it was industrial, a lot of the industries and the commercial ventures.
Well, I was just thinking, just visualizing that, of course, where the Covelli Center is now,
No,
it used to be plants and.
It was Republic Steel.
And you could imagine, it wouldn't take much for the river to rise, and that must have been months in the cleanup and people being out of work. And
it did trigger, flood control projects like the Lake Milton Spillway and everything. That was a product of that.
Okay.
Trying to do more flood control and improving flood control.
Now, again, in the steel industry here, there were 3 major players, is that right?
By 24, by the mid-20s, yes.
And that's
Youngstown Sheet and Tube, Republic, and Carnegie Steel, which was U.S. Steel. But there are all kinds of ancillary industries, too, like the Pollock Company, places like the Niles Fire Brick and Niles, because the furnaces are lined with refractory brick, and so somebody had to make it. So you've had a lot of those, and even the company subsidiaries like Youngstown Engineering and Foundry, Youngstown Steel Products. I mean, these are all subsidiary companies of the main corporations as well.
So you've got pictures going back into the 1800s.
Right.
And is it sort of chronological, the book, would you say? Or
not really. It's
interspersed?
topical.
Okay.
It's topical, really. I think it would have been too hard to do it in chronological. Topical made more sense. I mean, although I think actually with the working ones it kind of is, because the earliest one in here is 1899.
Yeah, that's what I was
Or
thinking.
1875, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's the earliest.
Seeing some of the
This
gentlemen
one,
that were
this one right
working.
here, that's 1875.
Yeah.
And this is 1882. These are 1900. And I know these have never been seen before, too. They were, I actually remember when this donation came in. When I was first manager of the museum. And it came in too late to use in the permanent exhibit because it was already open. But this was a lovely collection. We even have names of some of these. The donor knew who they were. The donor's father knew who they were. And this dates from about 1900. And they're workers at the Ohio Works, which became U.S. Steel. So, and that's kind of cool to have that. We also had beautiful images of them building the Ohio Works.
Oh, wow.
They were not of good enough quality. I could not get them as good enough quality to use in the book. I tried to, and they rejected them. They said they just weren't of good enough quality. They let me get away with a couple things, but not. They're real sticklers about that. And these were close on quality. So.
Again, we're talking with Professor Donna DeBlasio. She's from Youngstown State, and you're actually, you said it's a Center for Applied History?
At YSU, Director of the Center for Applied History.
Right, and you've you've used this with your students, or they've looked at it, or what's their reaction?
This is of course just came out, so I haven't really used it in class. I don't know if I will or not, but. We run applied history is sometimes called public history as well. It's basically things like non-academic in the sense of our audience is the general public. So it's not K through 12. Well, yes, it is because we do museum education, but it is an out of the classroom experience normally. And it includes things like museum studies, historic preservation, historical editing, oral history. All that fits under to applied history, and we operate in several of those areas. Our archives would be included in that.
Well, this is really this area is a treasure trove, and
Absolutely.
I think
I'm prejudiced, though. Remember that.
Well, again,
it is my hometown, so.
Right. I was thinking, other terms like kid in a candy store when when you have all these photographs that are donated. And would it be fair to say that, once you get the book, if you're more interested, I mean, the natural thing is to go to the center.
They'll let you look.
And take a look around.
Absolutely. We have, I like to plug my other place that I work at, the Youngstown Historical Center of Industry and Labor, the Steel Museum at 151 Westwood Street in Youngstown, is a site of the Ohio Historical Society. They're owned by the Ohio Historical Society, but in 2010, Youngstown State University's Department of History entered into a management agreement, and we manage and operate the site for the Ohio Historical Society. So we're a management team of 3, myself, chair of my department, Dr. Martha Polani, and the other applied history faculty member, Dr. Tom Leary. We actually work together to operate it, and then we have a number of students who work down there. And we have one other non-student employee who's actually an OHS employee, is Martha Bishop, who is her title is archives assistant, but she's so much more than that. And I got to give her credit; she was amazingly wonderful. And Pam Pletcher Pam Spees at the Mahoning Valley Historical Society was also very helpful. You don't do this kind of work without archivists that are willing to go and look and help you look for stuff.
Yeah, their archives are still at the Arms Museum, correct?
Oh,
But
yeah.
Are
Yeah,
they going to be transferred at some point
They're
to
going
the
to move
new?
it down
Yeah.
to the new building, but I don't believe they are. I'm not sure. You
Yeah.
don't talk to them. And our archives is open regular hours as well at the Steel Museum. And I mean, it's as timely. We're opening a new exhibit tonight on Italian Americans in the Mahoning Valley.
Okay.
It goes with our Journey Stories exhibit. We have an exhibit from the Smithsonian that we'll have through the end of the year called Journey Stories, looking at immigration and migration. And the Italian American exhibit was actually a student project. A young woman named Paula Schaefer did it as her senior capstone project, American Studies. And that's opening tonight at 5, so hopefully people will come and see it because it's wonderful. I know it is.
Will that be going on for a period of time?
Oh, yeah, that'll probably run. We'll probably keep it in through the winter.
Oh, good, okay. So you've got time to go down and see
And I have to
that.
plug it. She received a grant from the Ohio Humanities Council. We always thank our funders.
Sure. And we were talking, about the museum too. When I was there, I think it was back in the summertime, you were having reunions of some
Yeah,
type.
still reunions. That was
Yeah.
during Festival of the Arts.
Right.
During the Festival of the Arts, we'd been approached prior to that by a still worker, Carl Jacobson, and he actually worked with our staff to put together these reunions for still workers. So that was kind of fun, and we'd like to do it again. I think that was a nice thing to do, and
Sure.
we gave free admission, and well, it's free anyway. But I mean, but place to meet and to talk, give them coffee or whatever. So that was really a nice thing to do, and I like to do that again. I hope in the future that we can do that next summer.
And again, we're talking with Professor Donna DeBlasio. She's from YSU, and she has a new book. It's from the Images of America series. It's just entitled Youngstown, and it's available again. Maybe just name some of the places.
All kinds of
All over.
places. Barnes and Noble, Sam's Club, Walgreens, a number of different Walgreens in the area. Here at the Davis Center at Mill Creek Park, Mahoning Valley Historical Society, Steel Museum, YSU Bookstore.
Okay.
Those are the ones
so
I know about that I can remember anyway.
Easy to find.
Yes, very easy to find.
And before the show, you were talking about, you have some pictures. Also, speaking of the park, there were some of Mill Creek, and again,
lovely photos.
While you're looking for those, I neglected to say at the front, thanks to Keith Kaiser. We always do that, and we'll thank him again at the end. But he's nice enough to let us use the library here at the Davis Center, and of course, it's been around for over 100 years.
Yes,
the
it
park,
has.
yeah.
1891, isn't it? So these are very cool. We had a small collection. It's at the Steel Museum. I think it's called the Charlotte Tillman Collection. And I don't think it had ever been used before. Unfortunately, the quality of the photos is not terrific. They did let me get away with it, though, at Arcadia, because they told them I had nothing else that was comparable. So these are, I believe, never before seen photos of Mill Creek Park. As they were just taken by an amateur photographer. And we're thinking it's probably from the 20s. And she also had in her collection a couple of photos I don't think have ever been seen of Idora Park, of the pool. And it also looks like, and I'm dating him to the mid-20s just by the bathing suits and so the top two here, you can see the bathhouse and then the pool itself too. So that's something that there are images here I don't think that have appeared anywhere else as far as I know.
And again, these pictures would be in the chapter, what do you call, having fun?
Yeah.
Because, again, the work in the mill and the surrounding type of work was so difficult and backbreaking and strenuous that I guess the ownership figured that, if they are going to have a steady labor supply that doesn't burn out,
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. There was a whole effort in the early 20th century, we call it welfare capitalism, where companies were seeking ways, partly it was to stem unionization, to better the workforce, out of the whole progressive movement to the betterment of the society too. And that's all wrapped up in it. They're very paternalistic. And there was a strike in 1916 in East Youngstown, better as Campbell, or Camel as we say. After the strike, Sheet and Tube began a program of welfare capitalism. It really picked up in 1919 during the big strike, because they started bringing in scab labor from the South, African American workers, and so they had to put them somewhere. So they started building housing. They developed a whole housing program. I know I think a number of people are familiar with the Sheet and Tube housing in Camel.
Sure. Yeah.
And they had actually 4 plats, and there are photos of those, all 4 of the plats in here. And the Camel housing was for immigrant and black workers. There's detached single-family homes in Struthers that were for immigrant workers that they could buy and or rent. There are also a set of duplexes in Struthers that were for white American-born workers only for rent. And then there's Loveland Farms, which was for white American-born workers, but you had to buy, they were for purchase only. So, there was that. There were newsletters. There were industrial teams. There you go. That's a lot of them did that as part of this welfare capitalism thing.
Well, it's fascinating. You're talking about how they're designated for certain groups.
Oh,
and of course, you'd never be able to get away with that now, which for good reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you just think, as recently as the 20s, or going back that far, they were allowed to.
They could separate them.
Right.
And if you own an older home, and probably pre-50s maybe, even a little later, you could have what they call restrictive covenants telling who you can and cannot sell your home to.
Okay.
And it wasn't just racial, it was also ethnic and religious.
Okay.
So there were neighborhoods in Youngstown that, frankly, my people could not have lived in in that period because of the restricted covenants. So if you look at your old deeds, particularly turn of the century stuff, it's everywhere. Actually, all you got to do is pick up the Vindicator from the turn of the century, and there's even stuff in there about their new developments and the coded language, which if you know what you're looking for, they do mention restrictive covenants and things like that.
And I remember seeing the display, and this is also described, what you were just talking about, at the Center for Industry and Labor.
The company housing, yeah.
And the photo you showed of, I always wanted to ask this, because I've heard different stories on that, at Idora Park with the pool.
Yes.
Is it true? Now it was Kiddie Land afterwards when I was growing up.
They paved it over.
They paved it over. Was that basically a reaction to having, or being asked to integrate the pool?
That's what I've heard, too.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Because, all these, African Americans had fought in the war.
Right.
And it's, hello, we died for your country. We were
Right.
coming home with horrible injuries. We put our lives on the line. We deserve equal rights.
Sure.
Of course. They didn't want the pool. I think this is my feeling.
Right.
Is they did not want the pool to become a flashpoint. So and also, they just. There were so many other public pools that were opened.
Right.
Like Bort's Bort's North Side, all those pools were open by that point. So they just closed it and paved it over, and as we all remember, Kiddie Land.
Right. And again, things just change through time also. I think of Mill Creek Park here, where you have pictures sometimes you could see of people swimming in Lake Glacier and ice skating and all those things.
And you had to rent your bathing suit, by the way. If you
Is that
swam,
right?
and yes, you could rent a bathing. Some
Okay.
people I'm sure had their own. But think of that's an item of clothing you wouldn't necessarily be needing all the time. So you rented it. I don't want to even think about it, but you did rent you could rent bathing suits.
Now, you have, again, we were going through some of the titles of the chapter. One of them, again, is Steel Goes to War, and we talked about your mom. Youngstown would have been a key area for the whole war effort, I imagine,
Yeah.
in the 40s.
Absolutely, and it's my favorite picture of the war. It's Marlene Dietrich, the
Oh.
famous actress. She came to Youngstown to help sell war bonds. And she's I find her really interesting. You know, of course, she's German. She's from Germany, rabidly anti-Nazi. Became a U.S. citizen in 1939, and the rumor had it that she raised more money when she went on the bond drives than any other movie star. So I like that picture that she's here. We also have one in the book of Eleanor Roosevelt, but it's prior to the war. And then at the top, these are women who worked at Carnegie Steel, and I'm going to say they were in McDonald, I believe. It's Carnegie, Illinois, still at that point, but I have the names. I found the names of the departments that they worked in and everything. So they're here with a little World War II little exhibit. We got a picture of FDR in there. We can see it. There's a propeller. There's a uniform. All kinds of cool stuff. So they had a big, and this is what they did it for. They had a big rally at U.S. Steel, or Carnegie, Illinois Steel.
Yeah, which actually was U.S. Steel.
Steel,
became,
right.
Yeah.
And they kept changing its name. It all became U.S. Steel, I think, in 1950, I want to say.
And speaking of the Roosevelts, or Eleanor was here, but I remember also that FDR came
Yes.
to East Youngstown.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
You see there's a photo of him going through the mill. And actually, the Eleanor photo is in the mill, too. I mean, and that is very typical of the former first lady. I don't know how do you say that. What's in the Steel Goes to War chapter. There she is. There's Mrs. Roosevelt right there at the steel mill.
She, of course, was very involved in causes for workers and
Labor, very pro-labor, and minorities. Got in trouble with. I mean, she was one of the most loved and most hated people in America at the same time. Although I suspect the same thing could have said about her husband as well.
Sure. Well, and you think about current times and political situation. This happened before. I mean, we've had polarizing, I guess, political figures.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought FDR was somebody you either loved him or you hated him.
Right.
There are some people like I think former President Bush that you might not care for him, but I mean this is like virulent. They really loved him or really hated him. There was no
in between.
No, I don't think so. But he's one of those one of those people.
Well, we only have a couple minutes to go, but one of the pictures in the book that struck me was there was a photo of a railroad car of visitors.
Oh, that's Carnegie Steel.
And it was almost like it was a ride at a park. And that was like an open house day.
They did, and it was right after the war. And what really amazes me, too, if you go in the further photos, there's several from that event. The women are like in their heels and everything. They're going through a mill and thinking, really? And now I got to think they didn't bring them to the worst part, worst, but the most dangerous parts. But yeah, they did this huge tour. And at the end, they had all the wonderful consumer goods one could buy now in the post-war period. Just,
refrigerator,
washing machine, all that cool stuff that you must have. And
made out of steel.
And made out of, absolutely made out of steel. There they are with the refrigerator. And Benny Furness is probably somewhere. But there you go. So the ultimate in consumer culture.
Sure.
But, showing the stuff you'll be able to buy. And don't forget, people had saved up. They could buy that much during the war, so they saved up a lot, and now, absolutely, you can now buy all this stuff, and now so we've gone from war production to peacetime production.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. We've been talking with Professor Donna DeBlasio. Her book is Youngstown: Images of America. Again, you've been watching Senior Focus. My name is Bill Adams. We come to you a couple times each month through Armstrong's Channel 20, and thank you to Greg Roten. And thanks also to Keith Kaiser from Mill Creek Metro Parks that allows us to use the beautiful Davis Visitor Center, in this case the library. So come out and enjoy the park. It's there for all the citizens of Mahoning County. Until next time, thanks for watching.